Welcome back to the Foxhole, y'all. Foxtrotting in a Foxhole, Season 10, Episode 11, number 289, or 299, excuse me, overall. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan, back in Studio A today at Eagle's Nest 2. Yeah, give me a moment to get used to redoing things in here because I've been in Studio B because it kind of works with what I do with Aftershocks a little bit better. So, anyway, tune in to Aftershocks if you can. We just dropped an episode there on Wednesday, number 28. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We really could use the help out there as far as getting more people to become part of the Foxhole experience. So definitely do that. Drop us a line anytime you want. ftinfx@gmail.com or 541-525-0896. We'd love to hear from you. Love to get you on here, as quite a few friends of the Foxhole have done that already, and there's some cool things in the hopper. We keep slowly rolling these things out. It's hard to get people's availability, you know? Okay, enough of that stuff. As usual, shout out to the folks at Rode and Zoom for providing wonderful tools for content creation. Potensic for the cool drones and Toolbox for editing and whatever else we can get our hands on, if we can ever get real sponsorship. Okay, let's get to 99, one away from the big 300. Rolling. It's open FaceTime in the Foxhole. Man, a lot of betting going on these days, obviously, and the world not knowing what to do with it. I mean, the can of worms that getting in bed with gaming companies has spawned. And of course, there's so many other things to tackle the adults right now. We're just talking sports. We aren't getting into any of that crazy shit that's going on here. Part of my language. But yeah, just in the sports world alone, there's so much going on. I can see where. Anyway, we got a Vegas bettor, anonymous. He won $1.4 million last week. And you might ask, what the hell for? As a future proposition bet, obviously at the beginning of the year, the football year, so sometime in the spring or the summer, whenever those numbers are posted, he put down 50K for the Seahawks to win the Super Bowl. And the Seahawks at one point were a 28-1 favorite. Do the math. But yes, he walks away with $1.4 million. His people are happy. Wish I had an invite to that party. Killer. Now, we'll get into this in a closer look. This whole Hall of Fame thing with Bill Belichick and Eli Manning now. We'll talk about that. But I did think it was interesting, Jimmy Johnson coming out and saying he'd probably skip this year's induction because of all the bullshit. That's why we gotta bring this up again in a closer look. As we have many times before. Probably every time we go through one of these cycles. This one seems to be a little bit more prickly than others, though. Let's flip the script for a minute. It is open face, so we get to bounce around. If you're just new to this experience, the World Cup ticket prices. I've been seeing some crazy numbers. I mean, pretty much, let's look at the final itself. And what I'm seeing, I guess, on the after sale market are tickets that can range anywhere from 8,800 to 1,600. That's the average. I mean, there's a couple of seats out there that are going for 230K for the final, and that's at MetLife, I believe, which is okay. Wow, a lot to unpack here in terms of. I get it, because my friends, my friend took his family to the World Cup. It was an experience of a lifetime. A lot easier to experience that here on this soil. And folks that want to spend ridiculous amounts of money because that's what premium entertainment is in 2020s. They've known it all along, but now they can get away with it in terms of the void in our lives where we need something so badly, that gratification. It's interesting though, because there were some people who've been coming out, players in particular, United States men's national team, Tim Way, the legacy Way, that kid. He spoke out about it, and Pochettino, to his credit, shut it down and said, it might be a problem, but we're not politicians. We need to focus on producing the results on the pitch. That's the only thing you should be thinking about, especially that this is a great moment for that program. So I don't think Timmy Way is wrong or out of balance, but I like Pochettino basically just saying, dude, don't worry about that shit. You worry about us getting out of the group stage and doing well in the knockout round. Focus on that. Let everybody else bitch and moan about the high prices and the fairness or unfairness of it all. I think that's totally reasonable. Yeah. All the things going on with ICE, some of the global conflicts that some folks say this thing, ICE in Minneapolis, is just a diversion for. Regardless, there seems to be a lot of international sentiment that would love a boycott of the World Cup here in the United States. Yeah, let's see how that goes over. I know they've got over 150,000 signatures. That's an STFW. Yeah, it is. Do you really think when it comes push to shove? Now, I know there have been political football done with the Olympics, as we saw in 1980 and 1984 in Moscow and Los Angeles. But this is football proper, and that's the Olympics. You think about it. Yeah. And there might be some countries that make a laudable stand. But any other powers, no way, Jose. Yeah. Gives you talking points and podcasts, though. This was an interesting one that also came across the bow this week. The bow. Mike Florio. Yes, that Mike Florio. Catching all kinds of bullets, arrows, and slings for making comments after the Broncos-Patriots game, which, whether obviously put a major factor in, especially in the second half, should be played at neutral sites. And the usual boomer, tough guy, I'm going to take my t-shirt off at Lambeau or Soldier in January. That guy out there screaming, he got a lot of grief about it. And I thought, okay, if you take away, especially people my age, or have that mindset, if we mute them for a half a second and know where this is all going, Florio's got a point. But you're never going to calm that person at all. And the way this gets dealt with pretty soon, and it's not going to happen tomorrow, but I'd say by 2040, how many open air stadiums will be left? Most of the stadiums that are scheduled to be built or about to be built, probably 80 to 90% of them have some kind of dome or some translucent roof coming. So I think it's going to be a moot point for the most part. I mean, there may be some weird rain or hurricane type of stuff that can hit Southern California, the Bay, Seattle, and obviously Florida, and even the Eastern Seaboard. But I don't think there's going to be. I think we're going to move to where we have some kind of retractable SoFi kind of situation, or what the Commanders are planning to do in DC. These places are going to get wise. I'll bring this up a little bit more in the Nightfall of Diamonds in terms of what I think the vision truly is. That's why I think these folks, yeah, boomers my age, you're all just gonna have to like go grab another 30 rack of Paps and cry on your beers. Just by virtue of what these venues need for sustainability and the folks that sign off on it to make sure at least they break even. And that doesn't, there's too many dates during the shitty part of the year to be ignored just because, oh, I think football should be playing outside. Football was supposed to be meant like Rainitzky, man. Jerry Kramer, bro. Ground and pound in the mud in the tundra. No. Not what as I was just talking about with the World Cup, where tickets for the big games, we were talking 8 to 16 grand. You know what happened in Kansas City. Or was it Buffalo? I think it was Kansas City a couple of years ago. All these people losing digits because of frostbite. No. Okay. I'll bring that up later. The whole should you're in the Pro Bowl, and some other stuff that I just found out. Let me save that. Same thing. I think I brought that up in Aftershocks the other day, looking at my outline about Stephen A. Smith caping for Ryan Clark to get a job. Yeah, that went over well over the internet. Tell you, right? The RHBA and the agendas they push, and then get all defensive when you call out the ridiculousness, the ridiculousness of it all. Ooh, that was a tough one. Yeah. Okay. Since I've got a podcast, everybody's got a podcast. But I'm telling you, you talk about the wave of insufferable incoming. The legendary Jamel Hill and our girl Carrie Champion. They're going to do a podcast. I forget what it's called. I don't really care. But oh man, like those two need a platform to continue their RHBA, because they're like, I mean, she's like high priestess, and Carrie's like a high lieutenant up in that alliance. Wow. Okay. Did you have this on your 2026 scorecard, as far as scorecards are concerned? Uncle Luke. Yeah. He talking about maybe running for Congress. Yeah, he's been feeling himself since the Canes came back to the power, and everybody that's reshaped their neighborhood feels like they need to step up and make a difference because this country is so dangerous and we've lost our way, or whatever the narrative is being pushed. I'm an independent, so I don't, whatever. But yeah, that would be interesting. And it is Florida, so anything's possible. Damn. That's like Tony Montana. Well, not Tony Montana, but the real Tony Montana, God, I can't believe I can't. Pablo Escobar, when he did his stint in Congress back in the Medellin days. Okay. Another one I didn't have on my 2026 scorecard. Yay. Other words, Kanye apologizing for past comments he's made against Jewish people. That's real rich. Oh, well, maybe because you haven't been relative in quite a few minutes. Neither has your ex. It all really became Twilight quickly, so maybe all that money you lost with all the shoes and all the credibility you had from even the folks that want to be hard. Yeah, well, maybe I can apologize and, maybe there can be a comeback. Not hardly. Okay, I started the segment with a betting one. I'm going to close it with a betting one. All right. Your friend, but not my friend. I wish he was. Mattress Mac. He's at it again. What is Mattress Mac doing now? Well, it's Super Bowl time, so he has to make the news for making one of those ridiculous wagers. This time, he's putting a $2 million bet. I'm not sure. Is it on the Seahawks or on the Patriots? I didn't get those details. Oh, I'm telling you. See, where are the finger waggers when it comes to people like Mattress Mac or these other fools that donate 50 million to a football program? Alrighty, folks. We're cooking. Got some good things going on in the kitchen for our Friday afternoon buffet. So we'll be back with the high view above campus when we return. Alrighty, welcome back to the Foxhole. Ice cold chillin', like a funky cool Medina, whatever that is. All right, on that cue, let's get the homies and homettes together. Let's call up the Oregon taxi, go local today. So, not because we ain't no kings, but just because. Um, yeah, we're gonna get to the Eugene Airport. Hopefully, everybody's got their ID situation, so they don't have to pay the extra $45. We're just gonna, Cheshire Cat smile our way through TSA today, boogie it on down to the tarmac where our shimmering Gulfstream G650 is waiting for us. To do what? To get to our cruising altitude of 43,000 feet, where we take the high view above the campuses of America. Pardon me, I'm a little hoarse today. I don't know why, but we'll work through it. So we're flying above the campuses of America, and we're seeing a lot of stuff. But right now, we got to see something kind of somber, though, real somber. I don't know how this is going to play out, but apparently, I haven't been able to double check to make sure, but the legendary Lou Holtz. Now, I know some of you thought Lou was kind of losing his marbles there at the end. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. Dude's a legendary coach as far as the era I grew up in, and Jimmy Johnson probably, as much trash as he talks, has grudging respect for Mr. Holtz. And, he had a career in the NFL, had some stunts after Notre Dame, but he was entered hospice, and that can't be a good thing. So our thoughts, wishes, prayers, and hopes go out to the Holtz family. As they go through this difficult time. It was a great guy, great journey, and nevertheless will definitely be missed if this is the final huddle for him. Okay. I spoke about this on Aftershocks 28 the other day. I haven't really found out anymore. It still makes my head explode. Whole thing with Charles Biadico, that G League player I keep talking about. And I've been hearing some more feedback from the folks that are like me who want to get a handle on this. That it's time to sort of get the men out of college sports. You guys who are 26 and 27 years old, you should have your window between 18, 23 at the most. And I hate to be the one to say this, but I feel, yes, though I'm in agreement with folks, putting some age restrictions on this nonsense. If you can't get your shit together in the same time that normal people are going to college, or, as I've said many times before, everybody needs to grow the F up and just come up with a whole different set of rules that have nothing to do with being a student athlete and being an institution that promotes education and growth, training, and development. Not in that way. Yeah. Having a judge and your wife ties to Alabama. What the fuck? Pardon my language. And we're allowing this. I'll sing it again and I'll keep singing it. You know that song, The Order of Death. This is what you want. This is what you get. This is what you want. This is what you get. And what we're getting, I guess, if you have any sanity to you about all of this, is a pretty corrupt universe as far as college football and college sports in general is concerned. If shit like this, and it's college basketball obviously, but if shit like this can play, and when you're being that blatant, oh, we'll go find a judge. Oh, let's go find a judge that happens to be an alum and a wife that's tied to a lot of donors. Bob Weir, rest in peace, but as he once sang about heaven help the fool, spoke about this also in Aftershocks. We've gotten a little more feedback on the whole Dion paying players. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks as far as that goes. And is it opening up a can of worms? You know, everything got pushed back down the rabbit hole because there's time for college football to recede in the background, as I was saying the other day, right? They've got the semis are all parked. You got the folks in the equipment and the accounting department crunching the numbers and getting ready for the next campaign, right? You know, kind of like the Russians getting ready to deal with the Germans in the spring of '43. That kind of stuff. Yeah, I know, bad analogy. What are you doing with that war thing? Oh, man. You know, the one thing that does come out of this whole thing with Dion making the rules, and the reason why, is the kid. His name escapes me. Lyman. I think he might be going to the U. Well, everybody's going to the U. But they're talking about paying this kid $7 or $8 million. And I said, are we really paying these kids that much? Which goes to a long ways to why, of course, the kids don't want any guardrails. But you would think somebody would be like, do you realize, you know, the whole thing with Mensa, you know, maybe that's a good test case of how we can deal with this. And maybe we can come up with some weird sliding scale. You know, without a union, I don't know how you do this really, but maybe do some clever manipulation. Yeah, you might be able to, you know, come up with a way to where yeah, I sucked last year, so if I suck, I can only make this much. But if I knock it out the box and get the Heisman, I get this much. Are we really getting to that point? It sure seems that way. I mean, it's interesting, you know, as I said the other day, with Duke letting Mr. Mensah out of his contract so he could go, you know, replace Carson Beck down in Coral Gables. And I gotta wonder, with Duke being in the ACC, you obviously got something out of this. Yeah, I don't know what it is. If you all know, drop me a line or give ftinfx@gmail.com or 541-525-0896. Yeah, what's going on with this? A lot of people are not happy about patches coming to the jerseys. Really? You're pissed about that? This has been going on for a while. Anybody that complains, yo bro, yo sis, yo pops, yo mas, that integrity thing went out the window a long time ago. Never to come back. So stop bitching anytime you see something corporate and something that has to be unwritten. What do you think a Utah's going out to a private equity fund? Yeah. Plenty of things to be outraged. Patches on the jerseys definitely aren't one of them. Somebody's got to pay the bills. Not rocket science here, people. Okay. I'll lighten it up here a little bit. Gotta love this whole legacy thing that's happening in this world right now. Here in Eugene, obviously with the Ducks, and a lot of the great NFL players they have produced in the last 30 years or so. This kind of current run they're on that kind of started with Rich Brooks through Bellotti, Chip, Helfrich, Winnie Taggart, CMC, and now the man of steel, Dan Lanning. Haloti Ngata, great Oregon Duck, great NFL lineman, defensive, Baltimore Ravens. Pretty much ended RG Me's career, if you want my opinion, but that's neither here nor there. Way back in the day. His son, I guess, is going to play for the Ducks. If he's anything like his dad, boy, the Ducks just keep bringing in ballers. Just got to have Mr. Lanning get over that next level, right? Yes, I can watch a lot of mountaineering videos, and if you're climbing Everest, and you get to the Hillary Step, it's kind of like that's what Lanning's done with his Oregon program. He just can't get past the Hillary Step and get all the way up to the summit at 8,800 meters. Ooh. Man. I know this whole thing about Debo, speaking of a coach that actually has won it and been to the top of the summit. Yeah, folks are not necessarily in agreement. Some folks are applauding that he was a snitch, and other people, as typical, because everybody has to be a tough guy, like they're on the streets, going with that snitches get stitched. Snitches get stitches rap. Right. Well, as crazy as you fans are, that I'm not going to put it past you as far as trying to assault Debo for dropping the dime on your team if y'all aren't playing ball or playing fair. Man, I just think it's funny, especially Ole Miss, given the run they just went on. So better be careful, Dabo. Those folks in Oxford, they're feeling mighty tight of themselves, and we know from the past they know how to rock and roll on that campus. Yeah, maybe the incident I'm referring to is a little bit harsh because that's a little bit too racist. I'm just saying when it comes to Oxford, which is funny that that somebody hasn't rolled down to Baton Rouge to do something to Lane Kiffin's company car down there yet. Okay, let's be nice. I gotta think a serious one here. I was talking with Alec Ford when he was on on Aftershocks. He's a frequent contributor, a good friend of mine. We say the Vegas correspondent. And we've been talking about sustainability now for a couple of years, pretty much ever since I got this thing off the ground. And I don't know if I can verify this, but there's a report out this week saying that Rutgers has reportedly lost $500 million since joining the Big Ten, including $78 million last year. Now, let's just take even a half step back and take a deep breath. If you're a sane person and you're part of that university, its regents, whatever consortium they've got, for higher ed over there in New Jersey. Once again, an adult in the room saying, how is this sustainable? Where is somebody, especially Rutgers, you ain't winning dick? Now, I can see you maybe looking in your crystal ball like Indiana did and saying, we get Signetti at this, Mark Cuban on board, we can bring it home. I don't see that happening in Piscataway, okay? So you've lost $500 million in this Big Ten thing. This is going to be good for your school and its students. In what way? This continues to happen. 500 million, y'all. 78 million last year. They say ball don't lie. And you have to wonder. And you know they're not alone in this regard. Because when you're hot, you're sizzling. And when you're not, you broke. Okay. All right, quick glance at the hoops. I know I was kind of harsh on the hoops the other day. Not changing my stance on that from Aftershocks about great matchups, some great performances, but not nearly moving the needle as much as someone like Mr. Coward. College basketball has been better than it has in 20 years. That's so, then why isn't it moving the needle? I think it's kind of an insult to the people who played over the last 20 years, to be honest, because what's different from this? What's different from that? Come on, y'all. Come on, dude. No, man. There were some good, interesting games. I forgot to mention Nebraska getting knocked off by Michigan. That was a big matchup, 3-5. That got some attention. So cool there. Also, number 11, Illinois, upsetting number 4, Purdue on the road. Pretty cool. Mr. Patino getting win number 900, joining that club. So there's some good storylines. And like I said, with football, putting all of its stuff in the warehouse and in cold storage for a hot minute until we get to the spring games. Yeah, this is your moment to shine. So we're looking forward to being able to explore those storylines that come from the hardwood. Women, as I said the other day, it's just not really drawing that much attention. We said Audie Crooks is making some noise. And I can't think of her name. She's got a really cool podcast that kind of focuses on the WNBA and women's sports. And I thought I was being harsh, and she basically said the same thing I've been saying as far as women's college basketball right now. That even now, Caitlin Clark being way in the rearview mirror, and Indiana still being the second most, not Indiana, Iowa being the second most watched women's college basketball program. And that's, having schools like UConn. That's having Kim Mulkey in LSU. Obviously, Lady Dawn at South Carolina. Indiana is still 2 years removed. And what are we, like, Caitlin Clark hasn't played in Carver City in what? This would be her 3rd season away. Not good. Yeah, I mentioned the whole thing, I think, on Aftershocks about UNLV's coach Josh Pastner. I don't know if I did or not. Really frustrated at the small crowds at the Thomas and Mack Center in Las Vegas. I saw they had another bad loss the other day. And, it was starting to fall apart when I was there. That's been a while. They've had some upticks since I left, but it's never been the same since it was before I got there, the end of, Tarkanian's first stint before Bob maxed him and the hit squad did him in, but probably needed to. But it's so funny, in this day and age, can you imagine what the Running Rebels would be like with Tarkanian giving a license to do whatever the hell he wanted? Yeah, too bad Tark didn't live long enough and could be still viable for this shit. But, alrighty, but I don't know what they do in Las Vegas as far as that goes. Even if they were good with the Raiders, if they ever pull their head out of the ass, the Aces, the A's are coming. I don't know how UNLV gets traction, especially in that it's a transitory town. You've got some hardcores. They're from all over the place. It's kind of a melting pot. So I don't know if UNLV will ever have basketball, that is. I think football has, it's going to have its cult following, and they're having some success. But I don't know even if the basketball team were to become a national power again, would it get the traction necessary? All right. We're getting deep in the wormhole there. All right, let's cut away from here. When we come back, we will do something you should probably know. All right then, welcome back to the Foxhole. Your faithful host, Kid Harlan here. Ice cold chillin' on a fabulous Friday. TGI effing it with a little raspy voice today. So bear with me as far as that is concerned. All right, time for one of our favorite segments. Something you should probably know. Well, wait a minute. We got that wrong. Should be like this. Something you should probably know, or things that happened this past week in the world of sports you might want to know or even care about. So excited. There's a period at the end of the year where this segment, it's kind of a reach to find enough things to talk about, unless you want to really reach and talk about pickleball or some of the other weird things that show up on ESPN News on the Ocho on Sundays. But yeah, there's a lot of cool things going on. Obviously, we have our first major of the year in tennis. Talked to Mr. Big, friend of the Foxhole and our tennis contributor. Wanted to get his take on what's been happening as we are set for a big weekend as far as the finals are concerned. With our favorite, Mr. Joker, trying to get his 25th Grand Slam title as he outduels Mr. Sinner last night in an epic battle. I was watching the other semifinal with Mr. Alcaraz and Mr. Zverev, and I fell asleep. And I know Alcaraz was having some issues cramping up, but that's going to be a hell of a battle in the final with Alcaraz and Joker trying to get 25th. His 25th Grand Slam title, that is. I know a lot of folks felt, he's not going to win another one. But homie's just not going away. And, he's been pretty good in this tournament from what Mr. Big was telling me. Also looking forward to the women's final. I can't think of her name. She's playing one of our favorites, Miss Sabalenka. Yeah, it's not been a good week for the Bills. As Jessica Pegula, another deep run in a major, but she's not taking the trophy home. Or neither is Miss Astanamova. Nope. And on the men's side, Ben Shelton as well. Americans. We talked about Coco and her little temper tantrum on Aftershocks. I had something to say about that. Yeah, I guess somebody else had a meltdown. I mean, Center had a meltdown after his loss yesterday. So, woke ESPN wants to make sure we weren't just picking on Coco. We weren't picking on the sister. We got to make sure that we got to get the angry other people in there as well. Ooh, ding. But yeah, it's gonna be a good weekend. With that, it's Rabinka, if I'm pronouncing that right, and Sabalenka on the final. Joker and Alcaraz. So if you like tennis, and if you don't, you should probably be checking in. There's gonna be good stuff down under. Okay. Well, golf is kicking it too right now. And of course, picking up where we left off, and I talked about this on Aftershocks, about Scottie being the Jimmy Johnson of golf. Jimmy Johnson, the race car driver, 7-time that is. Scottie won by 4 strokes, in spite of the double bogey when he hit the water on 17 in the last round. It's like, ain't no thing. Still going to win the damn thing, being dominant as ever. Really like what we saw from 18-year-old Blades Brown, who was in the thick of the things after 54 holes. But, it's Sunday. It's time for the men to take over, but still a good show nonetheless. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk some live. Patrick Reed becomes the latest to say, I got my money. Might as well come back to the tour. He's still negotiating his way out of live, but I think before the season's over, Patrick Reed will be back on tour as well. Expect many others, as I've already pointed out. It's like, well, damn, I'm bored. I got my bags. I mean, got generational wealth in the 1 or 2 seasons that I've been in the live. So, yeah, they're laughing all the way. Sure, they'll, you don't get all the equity, and there are some penalties, but it's like cab fare compared to what PIF paid me. So bring it on. Okay, boy, if this isn't a harbinger of. See, we always talk about the shitty things that we have to look forward to as far as the future and what our current reality is. But there are some cool stuff that always says, yeah, okay, well, maybe this will be kind of fun in spite of it all. So, over the suburbs of Chicago, they're talking about spending $50 million to build a indoor golf course where you can play any time of the year and at any time. And I just say, oh hell, that is pretty damn cool. May help or hurt marriages depending on how you look at it. I'm sure there'll be some good stories that come out of those experiences. But yeah, I think that's a great concept in a lot of areas. I'm sure if they built one here, people would be all over it. And I do think that is something to keep an eye on in certain areas where this concept can be viable. My eyes are definitely peeled to this one. Indeed, indeed. Okay. Big UFC fight night. It was it UFC 328? I think. I can't keep track anymore. But the thing is that it was something else. The Paramount era begins. 5 million viewers. You know, pretty much a lot better than what ESPN was putting out. No buffering and things like that. Talked to our good friend of the show, my man, Mr. Cooley. We'll just call him our all-around fight contributor. But yeah, I texted back and forth with him while the card was going on last Saturday night because I wanted to get a sense of what's the Paramount experience like. He said a lot of the people that were, ESPN personalities made their way over there. So, from the content perspective, not much change there, but I think the overall quality of the telecast, definitely a thumbs up. Obviously, the big takeaway there, Mr. Gaethje defeating Paddy Pimblett to win the interim title. This is lightweight, which sets up a big unification bout with the UFC Gala, which is going to be at the Capitol as part of his USA 250 celebration, which we've talked about in the past. That's kind of the big deal there. It was a great fight, with the distance. People got their money's worth. But yeah, he'll be fighting, Ilya Tupuria. If I pronounced that right, probably not. Given my track record of pronouncing names. Mm-hmm. Cool stuff there. Oh, I'm jumping all over the place here. They say I wasn't even done talking about golf. But yeah, I think about UFC stuff in. But I almost forgot to mention that with all these guys jumping back from Live to the PGA Tour and possibly, DP as well. Lo and behold, Live will offer more cash bonuses. This is more the team payouts. Not like they aren't getting the big enough bag to begin with being part of that circuit, but Live just saying, okay, I'll leave. Well, for you, those of you who are thinking about leaving just before you go, what if we sweeten the pot? Makes sense, doesn't it? And this is what I had to think about here. So this is a Malaysian golfer. I'm not sure. I think he's on the DP tour. He was handed a 3-month ban for doping. And it just made me take a pause because I was like, who the hell gets busted for doping on any of the golf tours? But yeah, I guess it was a medication that you're not supposed to, and it wasn't, PED related, but you have to always have that suspicious eye whenever you see it. And that makes more sense. So I'm like, who the hell gets busted for steroids on golf tour? Okay. So I spoke about the other day race, the race season's upon us. Gotta set this thing up with the corner man. I was talking about Jimmy Johnson a second ago. Get the 24, the Rolex 24 at Daytona, the 24 hours of endurance. Team Penske, chairman of the board, starts the year off in the winner's circle. Nice battle there from what I was told. Just found out this, need to unpack and get more details, but number 47, the leader of the free world, apparently he has signed a proclamation that he wants a street race as part of the USA 250 celebration. I just spoke about the whole big unification bout that's going to happen at the UFC event on the Capitol grounds somewhere. And so I think Trump wants a street race in D.C., maybe to go along with it. Who knows? But this definitely would be part of the USA 250 celebrations. So keep an eye on that. All right. Something else to keep an eye on. Our girl, not Michaela Schifrin, because that's really our girl. But Lizzie Bond's our girl too. She hurt her knee. She's talking shit like, hey, this isn't going to stop me, but you got to wonder, she is 41 and all, how quickly she can bounce back. We'll be keeping an eye on that. All right, folks, when we return, we'll do a quick gaze of what's happening in the association and maybe the queens of the court, if they've got any news. See you momentarily. All right, welcome back to the Foxhole. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan here. Yeah, I gotta work on the positioning in Studio A again. Got a slightly different setup than I'm accustomed to using. Works well in Studio B, but I haven't really done much out here. And this is a rare opportunity with Rumi up in the mountains, so I'm gonna take the advantage of being up front. Kind of checking out the tube, waiting for some NBA action later. Clay Travis mug is on. He's talking trash, kind of like what we're doing. I'm gonna flip the channel here. It's always weird, especially on a Friday if there's not early hoops. Of course, mostly if there's early hoops, it's probably a college matchup. Yeah, I don't really care about. Just saying. Okay. Good segue. Let's talk some NBA. It's been a crazy week. And we all started, as I talked about on Aftershocks, the tumultuous weekend in Minneapolis and Twin Cities and the events there that are being spun in so many different ways and agitating so many people for so many different reasons. Some bullshit, maybe some not so. I'm not the arbiter. That's for somebody else's podcast to determine. But yeah, it was kind of interesting in terms of the NBA pulling the game off the schedule that Saturday night, moving it to Sunday and then Monday. So we talked about the other day, the irony of all teams to be facing the Warriors, given how outspoken Kerr has been and will continue to be. But in general, I mean, I was thinking about this when we spoke about it on Aftershocks 28. It's very muted when we think of the recent past in terms of their critiques coming from the players. And this is an ongoing thing, and I'll be talking with others about it to get their perspective. But just people are really into their brand. And maybe when I had Neil Sports on, maybe I will try to get him back on. I think that would be really cool. Because I've definitely got some more pointed questions about him in terms of this trend that's going away from being activists and being more about, hey, I'm just here to play ball. There's people get elected, and what you know, I'm an I'm an elite playing ball and making mad money. I ain't got time to be out in the street screaming and yelling, or like all the triggered wackos in Hollywood hopping on my platform, knowing that there's a bunch of dumbasses that think because you pretend to be a role in this world that we should listen to you about anything that matters. Ooh, did I just say that? But yeah, I don't think this players. I've been seeing it across the board. I talked about it with lots of folks. You know, what I've seen with this group of women's national team soccer players. I mean, even the outspoken WNBA. Going back to Kelly Loeffler and Free McMill and everything else that they've really decided to, the hills they've wanted to die on. And I know that there is some stuff going on as far as activism and unrivaled, but unrivaled is that it's not only is it not moving the needle has fell off the display, and you can't even find the needle, right? In terms of it, anything coming from that world that anybody gives a shit about, and they keep trying, even in social media. It's just like, yeah, okay, what is this? As I always say, am I lying here? But yeah, it was a fascinating week as far as that goes, and that was longer than I wanted to ramble. And this is the same thing I thought about, the injuries that have happened right before the trade deadline. I spoke about this the other day. The more time moves on, folks are thinking maybe there can be a trade that can be worked where Giannis goes to New York and New York gets KAT, and, whatever else it takes to get Giannis into the Big Apple. I found it interesting watching some of the shows this past week where folks don't believe someone like Giannis in this day and age, because he's okay shooter from the perimeter, but he's not really good at that. They just feel his value isn't as high as it could have been 3 or 4 years ago. Just as the NBA changes to a more inside game, as it has been for a while. But now you've got guys like Wemby out there draining threes left and right. I don't know. I think Giannis is pretty badass, and if I could get Giannis for KAT, I'd do that in a New York minute for sure. I'm the next and can make that happen. Just saying. He's going to be out still. He's dealing with that calf injury, but I just felt that. I think part of it's injury, part of it's realization, like, yo, this shit's over. And I forget who it was who was on that Bucks team that won, who just said, man, just look at, the shit show in the front office. You fired the dude when we were in first place, bring in Doc, and it's been a waste treatment facility ever since. And he ain't lying. I can't remember who it was who brought that up, going off on somebody's podcast. Okay. Interesting games this week. I go back to a week ago. The Rockets beating the Pistons in Detroit. The lowly Pacers actually beating Oklahoma City on the road. The Blazers finally coming back to earth. Luka returning to Dallas Saturday night, and the Lakers having to rally from 15 points down. Yeah. And then the Lakers getting absolutely mauled in Cleveland as LeBron possibly plays his last time as a player or a visiting player in Cleveland. Emotional. They were really nice to him and Bronny both. And, leading the speculation that this could be the beginning of LeBron's, farewell tour. Yeah, a lot of stuff going on this week. Wow. I spoke about, the fights this week, which I thought was kind of cool. The Pistons and the Nuggets getting all crazy. Yeah, no. Wait a minute. Gosh, where is that? This is wrong. There was something I wanted to say about that. This is one of those times where I'm having a brain fog. Might do me an edit, but we don't do that here. I was like thinking about, the Suns and the Nets were brawling the other night. And I was just thinking, wow, the kind of respect that Dylan Brooks is starting to get around the league, where people think he should be an all-star. He had 40 last night. I was just like going, damn. Because, I always thought he had a lot of potential when he played here in Eugene for the Ducks. But, he sort of embraced this I want to be a thug irritant role. But now, he's doing that and he's actually producing big time, to the point where folks, reputable folks are saying, hey, homie should be an all-star. They think he should be an all-star before LeBron, which I think is, absolutely crazy. Mm-hmm. You know, I spoke about the Rockets beating the Pistons, and I think the Pistons had another big loss last night, but they still lead the East by more than Oklahoma City leads in the West. We go figure that one, especially as hot as OKC started the season. But how about, San Antonio and Houston? They met Wednesday. That was a pretty interesting match. Just went back and forth until Wemby and the crew just rose up. They rocked Houston in that second half, to where those of us who think San Antonio can be a real problem in the postseason, we got like a little snapshot of that. Rockets, Sangoon, KD, they're tough too, but yeah, San Antonio, that's for real. Last night, Cooper Flag and his two teammate putting on a show. This most points by a teenager for Cooper Flag in a loss. He put up 49-10. His teammate, his roommate actually at Duke for the Hornets. What's his name? Like I said, I'm having a brain fog. But he went for 34. And somebody said this has got to be the greatest night for American white basketball players this century. And I think they were trying to be funny. I guess I'm trying to be funny too, but there's a lot of truth to that. It's just like, wow. For all these folks who think, oh my God, we need foreign talent to make basketball interesting. I'm seeing some American kids putting on quite a show, and we want to see more of that, no matter who they are. Hell yeah. Speaking of the Hornets, gotta love Barkley's comment about. So the Wizards and the Hornets played at some point last week. I'm not going to say it was over the weekend, but Barkley may have the line of February, if not the year. It should be in contention at least. He just says, if you attended this game, you clearly had nothing to do today. I said, damn, Charles, but you're right. I'll leave it at that. That was another interesting point. Talking to Mr. Big, and I'm hearing this from a lot of folks. They're like, can you tell me how to watch the NBA? With it being on all these platforms, I've finally kind of figured it out. But I think a lot of folks are still, stumbling around, with the blindfold on. Like, I want to watch some NBA. Because there are a lot of NBA games on during the week. As I told Mr. Big, they say NBA and pretty much everybody else, they poo and pee their pants when it comes to going up against the NFL, pretty much until the NFL is done with this business. And, after Conference Championship weekend it is, because there's only really one big party left, and that's on a Sunday. So now you can really start to look for the NBA, and the NBA's presence will definitely tick up from here on. Like I said, Sunday Night Basketball is coming back, and we get to hear from Caitlin Clark, because she's going to be a contributor this week. And yes, we still have no deal over there as far as the Queens of the Court are concerned. So, yeah. I can't think of that lady's podcast, and I'll write it down. That way you all can check out what she has to say. It's good stuff. But she's kind of skeptical that they're going to get a deal done. She thinks they're about to just sink the mothership, with both sides, with their stubbornness. It's like, in her opinion, I guess I agree. Yeah, you all got to get paid, but let's not get stupid here. Who knows? What is that? Project B. Maybe they'll throw a cash around and you'll be lifeless but rich like the folks in Live are. Okay, folks. We're definitely churning and burning them, as the kid used to say. When we return, we'll talk some beautiful game life. All right, folks. Welcome back to the Foxhole on a frothy Friday. TGIF in it for sure up in this bitch. Pardon my language, but we're feeling a little bit feisty on a fabulous Friday. Your faithful host, Kid Harlan here, bringing you all kinds of takes from the Foxhole. Okay, big stuff going on pitch side. We had big UCL match day. Spoke a little bit about this on Aftershocks. Didn't have enough time to really digest it, so I did the Aftershocks 28 episode right after PSG's match with Newcastle at the Parc des Princes. And clearly, I wasn't happy about the outcome, so I didn't really have time to unpack on that episode everything about the match day. Obviously the big news there is PSG and Real Madrid stumbling out into the playoffs. Right? They got to play possibly, they have to play 2 more matches before they can get to the round of 16. I think that's what PSG did last year, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. It'd be nice, but I say they're not playing in the French Cup, so why are you worried? But Real Madrid, that's another thing. It's been a very tumultuous year over there. We've spoke about Mbappe scoring the goals, but the success not coming. And once again, as somebody who rode and died hard with Mr. Kylian, old number 7 at the time, this is what you have to live with. With the brilliance, there can be a lot of frustration. And until he starts delivering the trophies, because he can score goals. We all know that. Everybody doesn't know that. And yes, he has a World Cup, and he's probably going to be primed to get a second World Cup. So it's not like his stature's falling. But the Madridistas, yeah, it's a conflicted house. And, they're having some moments of doubt and reflection over there at the Bernabeu. They are. So what else do we get out of this? City, Arsenal, Barca, Spurs, Bayern, they're all in the final 16. The names of going home, a lot of folks you would expect, but a lot of folks did think Napoli and Villarreal would make it to at least the playoffs. They didn't. Okay. A lot going on this week, I saw the big thing that one of my good colleagues, friends of the show, Lee and Adam, that I did the Aftershock soccer episode with. And Lee made a post about the USL kind of talking about what its, pyramid structure is going to look like. And the top layer is going to be the USL Premier. So it's going to be the USL Premier, the championship, and USL 1. And I was sitting there thinking, okay, what does this really mean? And I don't know yet. Clearly I spoke about this the other day because of the situation with our club here in Eugene, Sporting Cascades, that's supposed to be part of this. Better be part of this. But we don't know anything. And then I think about, some of the moves that MLS is. Because everybody's like, MLS is about to go down. But MLS is really adjusting well. I just see that they're moving their transfer window to align with Europe's, right? Kind of, it's got to happen basically since they're going to adapt a winter-based calendar, or more of a European-style calendar with a break, for the winter to deal with the inclement weather that you're going to have a lot in the northwest belt and the northern tier, especially northeast mainly. Places that get bone chilling cold. Yeah. So I think it's cool, and things seem to be popping. When you could think of a team that's kind of, as far as MLS goes, I would say has lost some of its luster, would be fair to say. This would be Sporting Kansas City, as there's a lot of things going on in the Kansas City Metro. But somebody recently stepped up to buy a majority stake in the team. And it was like almost $1 billion. Well, $750 million actually, like maybe a little bit north of $750 million. I said for a stake in Sporting Kansas City, y'all. They'll be telling me this is some bullshit league because it isn't. Like I said last week, 19 of the 50 top value teams are in the MLS. Ball don't lie. Okay, another one that's interesting. So, when people talk about big money ruining football proper, big money's ruining everything. What you talking about, honey? But yeah, let's think of it this way. So last year, according to I forget who, doesn't really matter, just part of the scenery is Mr. X said in JFK, 9.5 billion were spent on transfer fees last year. Okay. It's $9.5 billion spent on transfer fees in big time football. Now I know for you folks that want to grab your scarf and your sack lunch and hang out with your mates at the grounds, you don't want to hear any of this. And I don't blame you. But that just shows you how big this sport has truly become. And it's going to continue to grow. And as it goes back to the reoccurring theme in the Foxhole about our lust and our gratification that we seem to be getting out of entertainment, especially in a post-pandemic world, this is right aligned with that. Like, what's it take to win? We have no patience, and if we got the resources, we gonna spend them, and we gonna get them players, right? Man, okay. From the giggles department, La Liga, interesting league. I was just talking about all the troubles at Real Madrid. I know La Liga's boss, one of my favorites. Yeah, I guess we'll see how well this goes over. Apparently, La Liga is offering a $50 reward or whatever that translates into pounds or whatever euro currency is to anyone who will report bars showing illegal streams. Talk about the whole snitches get stitches routine, especially when it comes to taking somebody's ball away from them. I think that's interesting, and I'm sure there's some do-gooder out there like, see, over at the Arms, man, they're showing Mallorca and Barca, go bust them. Oh, man. 2026, you're so beautiful. Imagine that. Well, I'm hoping we get some data on who might be willing to get stitches as far as that goes. Man, oh man. Okay. Let's see. What else do we have here? Okay, with all the big stuff going on with the big Champions League window, one thing to take away from me is Arsenal losing its first Premier League match at home to Manchester United, who I spoke about the other day, that the Red Devils and the incredible resurgence they're showing thus far with Michael Carrick calling the shots. We'll see how long that lasts. And hopefully it does for him. It'd be good for him, and it's good for sports when the folks at Old Trafford have a dog in the fight. It's just same in American sports when it comes to your flagship brands. You can laugh when they stumble, at the edge of the summit, but you want them to be in the quest to get to the summit. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk some ladies here real quick. United States national women's team had a couple of friendlies, with the Emma Hayes, Trinity Rodman dapping it up. They scored a total of 11 goals, did not surrender any, dispatching Paraguay and Chile. Yeah, I think the more Trinity Rodman and getting Emma Hayes to do the dance was about the most you could take away from those two strolls in the park. And the fact that there were no overt displays given how tumultuous things have been in this country as of late. So, yeah, all good there. Although you can't say the same as far as the Champions Cup with the ladies, where Gotham, fresh off of its triumph, was stunned by Corinthians in the Champions Cup. And apparently a lot of the ladies aren't happy based on the times and where it was scheduled. Bill Cluster, I haven't had a chance to really uncork that one. We got anything else residual beyond that? Yeah, speaking of MLS, and I think I forgot about this one. This is actually not new, and I haven't heard where he might land, but it seems like, Irving Chucky Lozano, El Trey hero that plays for San Diego FC, that him and the club are parting ways. I know some LAFC fans are salivating that they could get him. It ain't gonna happen. You caught lightning in the bottle with Carlos Vela, but I'm thinking, the way our front office, tries to bring in stars and then stack together a bunch of, under 22s, talented under 22s, I must say. Yeah. That's why it's a prickly fan base, because they want Thornton and company to think huge, but these guys are like, nah, we're strategic. We got this. We know what we're doing. Lastly, gotta love this. River Plate. We're going down. We're going down to South America. Those giants. They are going to increase Monumental Stadium, where they currently play, from 85K to 101K. Once again, and we wonder why transfer fees were 9.5 billion in 2025. Everybody about making that money, and that's what River Plate's like, saying, yeah, well, so we got to pay for this, all this great talent some way. All right, folks, that's pitch side. When we return, we'll head to the diamond. Alrighty, welcome back to the Foxhole. Ice cold chilling like a funky cool Medina. Like I said, whatever that is. Ken Harlan here, your faithful host, smiling because it's the end of the week. It's gonna be weird with no NFL. Yeah, it is kind of somber when we don't have football again for a while.
But you can watch the UFL, Kenny.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's do some Nightfall of Diamonds, shall we? Where shall we start? Well, you know where we're going to start. We're going to pretend like we're out in the lot, man, with our veggie burrito, and our Goonie bird, and our ice cold Heinekens. Let's talk some hippie stuff here, man. There's a couple of things. Gotta love the saltiness on the hippie bus this week. So, apparently, there was this big announcement, Goose Tour, and one of the pairings on this big Goose Tour, they're playing MSG 2 nights. I think I've already mentioned that. But they're going to play SPAC, that's right, in Saratoga with my beloved Disco Biscuits. And of course, all the fucking weirdos and the Biscuit family losing their mind, like how dare this band not only get rid of Alan, but lower themselves to share a bill with Goose. And I gotta love the legendary Mark Brownstein, their bassist, affectionately known to all of us as Brownie, pushing back on all the salty ones, like saying, dude, you realize how many times I've seen Fish and the Dead and Spack, and being able to be on the other side and look at the audience is something I've already wanted to do. Are you kidding me? Put all your nonsense hate away and just go and enjoy it. If not, go find another band to listen to. Fantastic, Brownie. You tell him. I love it. Right. Fish takes the stage in Mexico. I caught the second set of the first night. I thought Trey sounded pretty raspy, but that kind of sounds about right when they haven't played for a while. I guess last night there was like a 4-song second set. You know, like they debuted a song, probably played Ruby Waves for 8,000 minutes. But I heard it was a good show. I'm hoping they catch the show tonight, but then again, I may go out and catch some shenanigans in the neighborhood instead. But I think that's cool. But I think, is there any other hippie news? Nah, you know, the typical folks posting fake stuff about dead tours that are not going to happen. But yeah, well, that's going to be going on forever. Okay, let's park the hippie bus. Dark Star eventually crashes. Let's talk some real Nightfall of Diamonds. So what is going on in the hardwood? Well, let's talk some. We're getting closer to catchers and pitchers reporting, so it's time to like really look now at the futures for the 2026 season. No, I'm not looking at the futures, but I'm looking more at how this all lays out and what I should be looking at. That's what I mean. Not going, well, they're going to win 88 games over or under, but no, like who's got the best farm system right now? And is it a big market team? Is it a small market team? And how does that look for the competitive balance as teams look to take down the almighty Dodgers? And this is interesting because the Brewers currently, according to this ESPN.com story, have the top farm system, followed by the Guardians, Pirates, then the Dodgers and Mets. Which, a couple of interesting takeaways here. One, the top 3 teams are not big market teams by any stretch of the imagination. We know the Pirates and their cheapskate owners. But it does say if they have good farm systems, the top 3 in MLB, that they are trying to win. And they are not rolling over and saying, okay, the big boys are going to do what they do. I'm just going to collect money. So that's a very good thing for the fans and the game itself. And it's also interesting that 4 and 5 are the Dodgers and Mets. You know, 2 teams, you know, with ownership that can spend a lot of money. So it's just not about buying the Kyle Tuckers and this guy and that, or what's his face, Bichette. It is also about developing talent when it's time to make these trades if you don't actually integrate them into your system. So, and this is why the Dodgers are successful, and this is why Mr. Cohen is spending a lot of money to get the Mets to where the Dodgers are. And you can like that too. So I think what you see from this top 5 is very good. Not great, because you can find some flaws in either side of this gulf between the haves and have-nots. But they're trying, and hey, you can't knock the folks who have it and want to get better. Okay. The interesting thing is that ESPN.com also says there are 5 breakout teams in terms of taking down the almighty Dodgers we need to be keeping an eye on at this moment. And this is interesting. They have the Guardians, after coming off of their playoff disappointment last year at 1. The Pirates, which they're cheap owner, but having Mr. Skynes. And of course, Livy Dunn is at their games. I know I'm terrible. No, I got this wrong. It's Braves, Orioles, Pirates, White Sox, Cubs. That's the order. The Braves, who've been disappointing for far too long, I get. The Orioles, who stumbled back and have a kind of a small window with some of the talent they have developed. I get that too. Like I said, the Pirates, but because they're cheap owners. But 4 or 5, this is interesting. The White Sox, who after that horrible season 2 years ago, slowly crawling their way out of the abyss up in the Himalayas that you can fall into when you're trying to climb K2. And the Cubs, which doesn't surprise me based on what they did last year, but the White Sox and the Pirates being 3 and 4 due as far as breakout teams. We'll put a pin in this one and see where we are come July with this list that ESPN.com has put out. Okay. It's a big deal about NBC doing baseball again, and they're definitely putting together a roster here of some interesting folks. We spoke about Bob Costa's going to be the host as far as the pregame shows, but apparently my man CK22, yeah, that Clayton Kershaw 22, that guy who went to school in Texas with Matthew Stafford and they played on the same little league and football teams. Going to go in the Hall of Fame as one of the great pitchers of his era. That guy. Yeah, I'm glad to see that. I'm curious to see what kind of TV personality he's going to be. He's always been a very good-natured fellow. Curious to see if they can polish him and make him cool like another former great Dodger hurler, Orel Hershiser. Speaking of, we're talking about big teams. I've talked about the Mets, talked about the Dodgers. What about the New York Yankees? Those folks in the Bronx. Well, there is word from the evil empire this week in Gotham, where Brian Cashman, GM, and the manager, Mr. Booney, both coming out and saying the Yankees are title contenders. What does the Foxhole say about that? Well, damn, you got Aaron Judge and a bunch of other badasses. You just re-signed Mr. Bellinger. You ought to be title contenders. You all got the money and the profile. In fact, if you ain't title contenders, there's a problem. Which got me to thinking, right? When you take away, right, the pre-Babe move, so the Highlanders plus early Yankees years, then you take away that period between 1978 and 96, which was 18 years, or so 18, 19 years. Where are we at right now? 2009. So we're at 15 without a title, which is crazy. The most decorated team in the in MLB history, excuse me, and they only have one ring, right? And it's crazy. I mean, I know obviously go back to the early 2000s, but pretty much since that run with Jeter, Mariano, and the crew, they got that ring in 09. That's like 15, 16 years now, which is a long time, if you're a Yankee fan. But this idea that Cashman and Booney got to tell us that they're contenders is just, as Jonathan Vilma says, you're crazy. Okay. The Giants signed Harrison Bader to a 2-year deal. It's interesting because I do believe, and I've mentioned this already on my platforms, that the Angels, Padres, and Giants are in a weird twilight zone dealing with this LA Dodger colossus. It's kind of interesting. It's like every time the Dodgers make a move, it's a real splash and everybody's screaming. And the Giants, we got Harrison Bader. But I'll be curious to see what Buster Posey is putting together to combat this blue wave. Okay. Speaking of the Dodgers, I was just speaking about Booney and Cashman. I was thinking about Dave Roberts and Andrew Friedman and wondering how much of pins and needles will they be on now that Yamamoto is also signed up to play for Japan in the World Baseball Classic coming up. Just like, oh, yeah, between those two and some of the other assets, gee, somebody gets a catastrophic injury, knock on wood here, heaven forbid, we don't want that to happen. What a pickle that could put the Dodgers or any of these, any of these clubs that have got their big stars tied to this tournament. Definitely keeping an eye on all that. The other thing I'm keeping an eye on more and more as I keep seeing the renderings, the Bellies project that's going to be anchored to the Las Vegas A's stadium. People kind of dismissing it. And I'm starting to think more and more, is this going to be kind of the blueprint of what we're going to see in cities and campuses moving forward? I know there are some colleges out there that are trying to create an entertainment district, but it's going to take a pro team to really knock it off the park for everybody to go, oh, so this is how it's really going to be done. Why I keep bringing up, said it earlier, about the whole point with Mike Florio, talking about neutral sites for the NFL. And I was sitting there thinking about, baseball in this thing with Las Vegas. If Vegas is going to create an entertainment district to make this whole thing with the A's work, it's got to be something cool that others are going to try to emulate. And that's what it is truly about. It is no longer about sitting there freezing your balls off thinking you're a tough guy. No, we're going to go down there and really have a good time. Okay, we got time. Let's hop on the Zamboni and take a ride around the ice rink of life just to see what's going on in the NHL. How about this? I think this is only the third time it's ever happened, which I thought is crazy. Last night, the Canes, the Carolina Hurricanes, they were playing the Utah Monarchs. And Utah was up by 2 goals with like a minute 59. And of course, the Canes scored 3 in that 2-minute frame to come away with an improbable win, which apparently has only been done twice before. Once in the 30s, and somebody did it in either 95 or 05. I can't remember exactly when, but I thought that's pretty crazy. Yeah. Okay. Let's take a look at the power rankings. Avs are still in the penthouse. Tampa Bay Lightning looking to get back to its championship form from the recent past. The aforementioned Canes are 3. The Wild, obviously, not being affected by the events in their city, still 4. The Stars lurking at 5. Keeping an eye on the Sabres, who are at 6. Why am I keeping an eye on them? They've won 5 in a row. They're 7-2-1 in their last 10. Good time to get hot, but don't peak too early. All right, folks, when we return, a very spicy closer look. You want to stay for that. All right, be back momentarily. All right, welcome back to the Foxhole. Your faithful host, Kid Harlan here on a fabulous Friday. TGIF in it. Yeah, brah. It is time to opinionate, editorialize, talk a little trash. That thing we do, a closer look. Well, I said it'd be spicy, so let's try it. Let's start with real talk about the Hall of Fame. I spoke about this on Aftershocks, and as the week has progressed on, talk has intensified. A lot of this surrounds Bill Belichick getting snubbed for the Hall of Fame on his first time of eligibility. There's been a lot said, about Spygate 1 and 2, Deflategate, his relationship with the media. Oh, gee, only one with Brady sort of thing. And the smart people are all in agreement that this is stupid when it comes to Bill. And it goes to the bigger conversation about what Dion said. Is it a Hall of Fame or is it a Hall of Fame? And if we're really being smart, it should be a Hall of Fame. Like with baseball, as I've been talking about, but some of it's less than what I say all-time greats getting enshrined. Do we need, once again, to get the adults in the room for all of this nonsense and have a frank conversation? Now, a true Hall of Fame, is that way too elite, and does that cause for people being more butthurt? But, Jason Whitlock, being Jason Whitlock, he has some interesting takes on this week. He showed some clips, especially of Drew Pearson pouting when he didn't get in and, basically crying your way into the Hall of Fame, or Harry Carson and his angry rants, take my name off the ballot kind of nonsense. And I don't see eye to eye with Prime on a lot of things, but I am with them in this. The Hall of Fame should be for the truly exceptional. And we've gotten beyond that. And we've let petty nonsense get in the way. Oh, we're punishing Bill by making him wait. I mean, this whole argument about, well, I wanted to make sure these people that, were on the senior committee got in. Dude, Roger Craig, great football player with the 1,000. He's not a Hall of Famer. I'm sorry. L.C. Greenwood, not everybody on those great Steeler teams needs to be in the Hall of Fame. You kept Bill Belichick out for people like that? Come on, man. Come on. That's where the adults need to get real. And let's make this about truly greatness and make it special and truly an honor. We can have endless debates. Well, gee, who gets in there? Fine. But right now, we're just trying to open the door and sitting here figuring things out. And by the way, Whitlock, you're absolutely fucking wrong, pardon my language, about Art Monk not being a Hall of Famer. That was one of the most ridiculous takes I've heard all week. Wanted to go to Nashville to whoop your ass myself after hearing it. But whatever. Unlike some of these other folks who were just like, really, man? Really? Whew. Yeah, lost my track. More on this as time goes on. We'll be revisiting this conversation again and again because it ain't going away. Okay, let's go to the Race Hustlers Baiters Alliance and the coaching cycle. Lots of stuff going on here. With Whitlock and Cam Newton going back and forth now in terms of, well, gee whiz, how come these people aren't getting an opportunity? And it's interesting because in this coaching, there's 2 coaches to be hired still. I'll get to that in the next segment. But the point being is so far there hasn't been a person of color hired in this cycle. And, the Race Hustlers and Baiters Alliance don't know what to do with that. They want to scream and yell. And you've been hearing stuff, some really insane things, like Acho saying Shedeur Sanders shouldn't have to listen to his next coach because what's he done? Well, what the fuck has Shedeur Sanders done where he shouldn't have to respect the coaches coming in? This is coming not from the idiots on the internet. This is coming from people who were supposedly paid to comment on this stuff. If you're going to pay people for ridiculous takes, man, my big account definitely could use some assistance. My goodness. Whoops. Got a little carried away with myself there. But yeah, it's all kinds of nuttiness. And I don't know what to say, when it comes to this anymore. When I sit there and listen to the Cam Newtons and Ryan Clarks and Shannon Sharps, all these fools. I'm like, what do you want? I'm not saying that the NFL shouldn't be trying to promote a diverse pool of people in management positions. You never hear me say that. But this narrative that every hire is, when it doesn't go to somebody they think is deserving, is racist, is absolute bullshit. We are about winning, okay? And for all you fools that say, oh, they don't want people like us, maybe they don't. But they did want someone like Ozzie Newsome. The last time I checked, Ozzie's been hella successful. So the NFL and its corporate Madison Avenue posture, which is probably bullshit when we get past the veneer of it all, but that's something they've always kind of carried. And they're more like wanting someone like an Ozzie Newsome as opposed to, gee, let me just bring someone like Cam Newton and his clown suit in. Or let's bring Ryan Clark, who's going to play the victim every 2 seconds when something goes against him. I mean, he had one of the most ridiculous takes. He's had several. Why he is still on the payroll at ESPN just goes to show you that corporations do have too much money in this world. And maybe we do need to redistribute the wealth to make sure that we all get to be crazy, like Ryan Clark. Just saying. Speaking of Shador, let's kill the Pro Bowl once and for all. All you dumb mofos out there keeping about him being in the Pro Bowl. I mean, it's ridiculous. We got one on the one hand, Acho, this nonsense, but all these was like saying he's a Pro Bowler, and the new coach coming in today saying, "Oh yeah, we were going to draft you in Baltimore," and this dude was a scrub for a reason. And if I was Dylan Gabriel, I would be pissed off. Yeah, he was 3-4, and some of those wins were so bullshit. I ain't saying Shador can't be a good quarterback in this league, but let's pump the brakes. The only reason he's a Pro Bowler is the people that were available other than Cam Ward, which is bullshit that no Cam Ward, but you want to go with the social media star. You're ignoring the number 1 pick in the draft, a very viable possibility in the future now that he's got a good OC joining him. For this clown show social media with these psycho followers who are saying shit about Kevin Stefanski, and you have reputable people going along with this horse shit. He sabotaged him and he did the brother wrong. I heard Chris Broussard speak. I'm like, Chris Broussard, at some point, they may need to take the microphone away from you because of the ignorant takes that are come out of your mouth. That was one of the dumbest takes, too. I mean, this has been a week of some really stupid takes. And lo and behold, probably 25% of them are associated with Shador Sanders. But fuck Shador, pardon my language. Let's talk about the Pro Bowl. Let's get rid of the damn thing. It outlived its usefulness before the turn of the century. Now it's stupid. It's a flag football game and some agility contest for something nobody gives a shit about. But yet we're going to cape for this 5th round draft pick like, oh, that's a good thing. If that's a good thing, then obviously being a Pro Bowler is only slightly before being able to get into the Hall of Fame, as I was saying earlier in this segment. My goodness. I mean, seriously. And then I have this whole thing about, well, gee, LeBron's not going to be a starter. We got to figure out a way to get him in. Do we really? Now, if LeBron comes out and says, this is my farewell tour, okay. But otherwise, LeBron's accomplished enough and get him on there. He doesn't have to be a starter. And this idea of maybe letting Dylan the villain have a moment. Because LeBron certainly has had his share of them. But at this point, do you even really need a moment for a competition nobody gives a shit about? Like I said, they should just go to Vegas and just show them like who can get in the most trouble. That would be more compelling than any all-star game at this point, especially when it comes to the 3 major leagues. And probably all of them for that matter. The only one I've seen that was worth the damn this decade is, oddly enough, when the WNBA's bitter ones that didn't get selected for the Olympics play the Olympic team. That's probably been the best All-Star game. All the rest of them have been two shams of many travesties. Am I lying as far as that goes? No, I am not. What do you all think? I'd love to get your take on. Do you actually watch these games, or are they completely robbing oxygen we need for our existence? I don't know. All right, folks. We're almost at the finish line. When we come back, the NFL report and some TMCA time. See you on the other side. Yeah. Welcome back to the Foxhole. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan here. Closing it out for you on a fabulous Friday on the Foxhole. Okay, let's go to the No Fun League. Start off with a somber one here. Another one of the greats from the 60s and 70s. You know, when the 49ers still played at Kezar. I was talking about that a few weeks ago. John Brody was their quarterback. You know, also was a great announcer. Played on the senior tour because he was a prolific golfer as well. But yeah, you know, some good teams. The Niners, you know, pre-Bill Walsh. Definitely pre-Bill Walsh. Didn't quite win the Super Bowl. Always ran into the buzzsaw that is the Dallas Cowboys. Nonetheless, our condolences go out to his family, friends, and 49er Nation. Okay. Big news with the Vikings firing their GM, Mr. Adolfo Mensa. Yeah. Sam Darnold goes to Seattle. Gets him to a Super Bowl. You're stuck with young J.J. McCarthy, who already looks like he's riding on bald tires. As Judas Priest says, some heads are going to roll. And they did. You have to wonder what's going to happen there. I mean, I think J.J. McCarthy, I don't know if he's going to be a good quarterback or not. I mean, it's such a mixed bag with him. You know, that's the same thing with my guy, Mr. Daniels. I think Mr. Daniels has shown a little bit more of an upside, but they both can't stay on the field. If you can't stay on the field, you ain't a help to yourself, and you definitely ain't a help to the fans. And so you have to wonder there, especially, like I said, you're in Minnesota, and you're watching Sam Darnold, who you could have kept in the building, probably paid him in the 30s, and continued to develop J.J. McCarthy. Maybe you would have a chance to get your first Super Bowl right now, as opposed to being pissed off where the GM is told to hit the bricks. There you go. What is this going on with Bo Nix and Sean Payton? Like I said, I talked about Sean Payton and Aftershocks. You know, Sean Payton has just gotten this sense about himself that, you know, right, he's beyond reproach. You know, I mean, it was incredible what he did for the Crescent City, getting him that ring way back in 2009 or whatever the hell it was. But, you know, ever since then, it's just this guy. And now, you know, kind of speaking out of turn when it comes to his quarterback's injuries. I know you're the CEO, but for Bo Nix to push back and says, I don't know what the hell he's talking about, and why are you putting my shit out in the open? Pardon my language. I don't think it's anything major yet, unless, of course, they experience the hiccup in year 3 once there's more film to diagnose what they've been doing right. Something to keep an eye on. I'm not going to make a big deal about it yet, but it is interesting. You know, it's clear that Sean Payton was brought back to earth that, yeah, you're a great coach, but you ain't all that. You ain't going to walk up there with Stiddy and get yourself into the bowl and get your second ring with another team. Not quite. Maybe you want to be a little bit nicer to Bo Nix. You know, he fired his OC, but then again, I don't know. It's not even then again. It's just going back to we were being that cranky when you thought that Jarrett Stidham. No, I mean, yeah. If you want to talk about some of the shortcomings that the Broncos and Bo Nix had in first halves, okay, maybe, but this just looks like he got his ego bruised and somebody's got to pay the piper because he wanted to be drinking out of the silver chalice. The Bills hiring Joe Brady. Some people happy, some people not. Another one of these within hires. Everybody's crying me culpas. Oh, Josh Allen was playing hurt, and Josh Allen is falling on the sword. That if he had made one more play or one less turnover, they'd still be playing. Well, guess what, Josh? You didn't. And we'll see what happens here. I don't know what the problem with this hire is. You got rid of a guy that had like a 63% winning percentage. Yeah, 63% winning percentage. Basically, cut the same tree. You know, kind of like with the Commanders. You know, David Blau, who worked under Cliff Kingsbury. Like, if that wasn't working for you, why is this? If you felt you maxed out with McDermott at 63%, Joe Brady's going to do what exactly? Well, the Pagulas, you know. What do you want to say there? The Ravens hiring Jesse Minter, very interesting hire. Like what I've heard from him this week. You know, he's been in the building before and helped shore up San Diego's defense. Yeah. You know, he seems like he wants to get on the same page with Lamar. So all you folks out there hoping that there was a Lamar trade, I don't think the Ravens want to move off of him. I do think it is interesting. Speaking of Lamar and Josh Allen, what are they like? No MVP, right? In the last 40 years, as a quarterback, they've all won the Super Bowls, except for these two. Makes you wonder now that they are getting ready to cross the 30 threshold and go south of it. Are they ever going to hoist the Lombardi Trophy in their respective careers? Okay. The Browns hire Todd Monken. Like I told you, odd show on that crazy take. Now, who's he? Why should Shador have to listen to him? Somebody else. Take the microphone away from people who have asinine, insane takes like that. I know it helps them clicks and whatnot, but still, when you make just an absurd take like that, you should have your internet privileges forfeited, right? If we have a new world order, you should be able to, like, you know what? Who cares about, you know, civil liberties? Your internet privileges have been taken away. Yeah, I know. But somebody out there is going to be triggered.
I can't believe he said that. What? You want to impinge on civil liberties?
No, I don't. But I do wish certain people had their internet privileges revoked for stupid ass takes. Gotta love Jim Schwartz, though, as far in all of this. Basically telling Cleveland Audi 5000. You're going to give me the job? Well, FYMF then. Yeah. Props to him. You know, it's interesting because the whole coaching search here, making folks take this, you know, I don't know, the take-home assignment, which asks you all these questions like, how would you develop Shador Sanders? Well, how would you develop Dylan Gabriel? This is why, hopefully, the Browns and Jimmy Haslam remain a complete shit show. Because after all, my Commanders / Redskins football team had it for so long with Dan Snyder. It's good that somebody else says, I got this one. Don't worry about it. I'll hold your beer too while you're at it. Mike McDaniel to the Chargers as an offensive coordinator. He was highly sought after. He was pretty funny in his presser, like telling people, hey, bro, I ain't about to bring out a vape. That'll be interesting with Justin Herbert, because obviously Justin Herbert catching some serious arrow slings and slugs right now, rightfully so. As I said earlier, the Raiders and Cards are still looking, clearly hoping to probably pluck somebody like a Clint Kubiak from Seattle staff, or perhaps somebody from the Vrabel side of the equation. Can't blame either team there. I think the Raiders is the better job. But this is not as close. This is closer than people think. So it's not that far of a gulf. And you're talking the Bidwells historically, and for the most part, this century, Mark Davis following what his dad did to destroy the great legacy of the Silver and Crack. Whew, I know that was harsh. Mm-mm-mm. How about Aaron Glenn reaching out? Speaking of the Raiders, Aaron Glenn reaching out to Chucky, John Gruden for the OC job, and John Gruden saying thanks but no thanks. Wow. Even John Gruden just says, "Man, come on, man, I ain't going to work. You gonna be there for a year. Why it makes you think after putting up with Mark Davis's BS that I want to deal with Woody Johnson, and not to mention having to deal with Mark's dad, Al." Yeah. And speaking of Stefanski, I thought it was interesting when he came out this week and said the GM position needs to be filled before we can even start talking about who's going to be QB1 moving forward. You know, the Race Haters Baiters Alliance really dealing with that because he's their favorite whipping boy in terms of, you know, somebody being an example of the out of touch white man still running things and putting someone like that, you know, in a position of a franchise he shouldn't. You know, man, they did the brother Raheem wrong, which they may have given him another year. I'm not going to argue with those that say that, but get off. Especially when it comes to Mr. Blank. Come on, folks. Stop it. Okay, that's perfect segue. The trucks are here, containing the stainless steel bowls of the smelliest varieties. You know, the ones that come in complimentary, regular, and XL sizes. It's TMCA time, folks, in the Foxhole. You know, the time of week where we give out the awards for folks whose distinctions during the week, or as we like to say, them being who they be, earn it. Let's do this. Okay, I'm going to give an XL. Yeah, because she was only speeding, but still. Shikari, driving like a fool in SoCal, reaching up to speeds that exceeded 100 miles an hour. Well, because you've been sneaking it up on the track, this is the only way you can get any headlines. Come on, Shikari. But yeah, that's definitely worth an XL. I'm going to give 2 XLs to the Colorado Rockies. No, we're going to make it 2. One for scheduling a fan fest in January when you, and not canceling it, knowing the inclement weather that had a major impact on that Broncos conference championship game. 2, what are you doing scheduling a fan fest when the Broncos are playing for a chance to be in the Super Bowl the same Sunday? The level of stupidity on there, unless you're like, hey, the Broncos are going to be there, they're going to already be out of it. But not pivoting away, especially with the weather that, you know, hit the Colorado region and the rest of the most of the country this past week. Yeah. Speaking of, I'm going to give an XL to that Broncos fan who got knocked the fuck out, pardon my language, because he took on a bunch of Patriots fans. I know you're hot. I know you thought Stiddy could have put you up, and then Sean Payton and his arrogant ass had to like be too cute with his play calling, and a trip to the Super Bowl, which you would have gotten your ass kicked by the Broncos. Anyway, you're hot. But to go out and talk shit to some New England fans and get knocked the fuck out in one punch, yeah, that's some TMCA stuff right there. Okay, I'll give you an XL for that. I'm going to give 3 XLs again to Jamel Hill for the ridiculous take she had about Stefanski in Atlanta and Deion Sanders going there. You know, that same Deion Sanders who is turning the Colorado program that everybody thought, you know, right, was the Queen Mary and the something that the boat people occupy. Am I lying there? Oh, and I'm going to give 3 to Acho for that ridiculous take, speaking of Colorado and the whole Shedeur Sanders thing, about what his incoming coach shouldn't even listen to this guy. Wow. For somebody who, yeah, has not really shown he's much more than a clipboard holder, if we are being honest. Come on, Acho. Stop playing the race hustling baiting alliance playbook. Stop that bullshit. The Browns get 3 XLs for their coaching search. It being such a shit show that it came down to this with so many people walking away, pulling their name out of it, just like, I don't want to deal with this. And then treating probably the better in-house candidate who's got respect like shit for him to tell you FYMF. Okay. I'm going to give 2 XLs to Monica Lewinsky. Monica Lewinsky. Why? Well, okay. What's been going on here, especially in the Twin Cities and other cities, this whole battle between those who have issues with the immigration policies and those who are down with it. What's ever in between. But her getting her 2 cents in, like she's somebody we should listen to when she made her fame on her knees, getting her dress soiled. Otherwise, we wouldn't give a fuck about this 99-cent store who my friend actually worked with before she even became somebody. Clown. And how she's making lots of money on her podcast because you dumb fucks don't have anything else to do. Should be listening to this podcast or SJ Gets Down. If you're going to spend your time on something. Yeah. But that's worth 2 XLs for me, that she didn't even open her mouth on this. Most people need to shut the hell up because what? So we should listen to you? About boycotting stuff? You didn't boycott the slong. Ooh, did we say that? Wow, we're getting really bad. Okay. Wow. Oh, man. Well, last one along those lines, I'm going to give 2 XLs to this registered nurse, Eric Martindale. For losing your job because you're bragging that you're not going to treat MAGAs. Okay. Like Jordan says, Republicans buy shoes too. The point being is, I don't give a shit if you hate MAGA or you love MAGA. But whatever the case, you can't say you're going to deny either one, work in the medical profession, and still think you're going to keep your job. The internet keeps receipts. And what they say, you just don't hit send, even if you're triggered, enraged, and you're trying to make a point. It does become a fuck around and find out situation. And that's what happened to this clown. I don't care either way what your position is on that. Like I said, as an independent, yeah. I ain't here to have an opinion on that. I'm here to talk about sports and talk shit about funny things like this. And this clown, definitely, yeah. Yeah, that's, 2 XLs. Zigging 3, 2 XLs. He's going through enough, having lost your job. And especially I'm sure some triggered person, especially in that sector, will hire him like, yeah, you were done wrong. But in most cases, you don't want to lose your job in this really scarce market because you can't keep your feelings to yourself off of social media. Keep your feelings off of social media is what I mean to say. All right, we're fumbling over our words, which means we need to get to the finish line. And we are. Woo! All right, folks. We got a big episode coming next week, episode 300. Looking forward to it. It could be regular or something unique. You never know. It just depends on what kind of inspiration we have. Our first weekend without NFL football. Yeah. We're all going to be depressed because we're going to somehow have to find college basketball interesting. Luckily, lots of NBA, lots of beautiful game life, NHL. So, we'll find things to put on our TVs this weekend. Keep an eye out for Aftershocks 29 early in the week, breaking down what happens in the Aussie Open. Maybe I'll try to tape a segment with Mr. Big, and we can insert that in as well. Who knows? If you want to be part of this experience, hit me up. We really want to hear from you and have you on. We've got some hopeful things in the hopper as far as the scene goes. Keep an eye out for SJ Gets Down. Heard she's done editing, so that should be, I think, episode 3 or maybe it's 4 per season 2. We're about to do a joint episode together, so we'll see how long it takes us to get that out the door. All right, folks, I've rambled enough. This weekend, as always, enjoy good food, lots of adult beverages, but don't have hangovers or end up in bracelets. Stay safe. Definitely stay sane. Both of those things are important in this tumultuous world that we're living in right now. All right. Boogie on Stu. Boogie on Reggae Woman. We'll see you soon enough. Peace, y'all.